Dr. Lissa Ventel sat in her office at the Thessarin Institute of Xenocultural Studies, reading the latest message from Dr. Marcus Chen, and felt the familiar pull of curiosity intensifying into something more like compulsion. She'd met Marcus 3 years ago at an academic conference on cross-species communication patterns. They'd connected immediately over shared fascination with how different species perceive and interpret reality, spent hours in animated discussion about everything from human literature to Thessarin philosophical frameworks. After the conference ended, they'd maintained irregular but meaningful correspondence. Messages every few weeks sharing observations, recommended readings, thoughts about their respective research. Marcus's messages always included observations about Earth. Not tourist guide descriptions of famous landmarks, but genuine insights into how humans actually experience their world. He described autumn in Seattle as Earth reminding us that beauty and death are fundamentally intertwined. The leaves are most vibrant just before they fall. He'd sent her a recording of rain on different surfaces with the message, "Humans find this sound comforting despite rain often causing significant inconvenience. We've built entire aesthetic categories around appreciating things that make our lives objectively harder." He'd shared a photo of a crowded city street at night and written, "This is what humans call loneliness, being surrounded by millions of your own species and still feeling completely isolated. It's simultaneously our deepest pain and most profound shared experience. Everyone on this street understands this feeling intimately." Lissa had become fascinated, not just with Earth as an object of academic study, but with how Marcus perceived it, how humans turned their experiences into meaning and story. She'd read the human literature he recommended, Camus, Morrison, Borges, Ishiguro, studied Earth's cultural development patterns, analyzed human emotional frameworks and communication systems. But increasingly, she wondered, what would it actually feel like to experience Earth the way humans did, rather than just studying it from academic distance? Then Marcus's latest message arrived with a casual suggestion that wouldn't leave her mind. "You should visit Earth sometime, Lissa. Not for formal research or official diplomatic purposes, just to actually experience it. Walk through a forest in spring. Taste street food from a vendor who's been at the same corner for 30 years. Sit in a coffee shop and watch people. You'd understand humanity better in 1 week of genuine experience than in 10 years of academic study from safe distance." Lissa made a decision that would shock her colleagues, horrify her institutional supervisors, and concern her family. She was going to Earth, not as Thessarin cultural researcher, not as official visitor requiring diplomatic protocols, just as Lissa, privately curious about a world she'd studied but never truly experienced. Lissa didn't file official travel requests, didn't inform her institution or her government, didn't arrange formal academic visits or diplomatic credentials. She took 6 weeks of personal leave, accumulated vacation time she'd never used in 8 years of research work, booked civilian passage on a commercial transport, arrived on Earth with tourist visa, basic cultural briefing materials, and Marcus's stories as her only real guide. She didn't tell Marcus she was coming. She wanted to experience Earth first, form her own impressions, before his physical presence influenced her perceptions. She had his messages, his recommendations, his stories. That would be enough to start. Her first day on Earth was overwhelming in ways no briefing materials had prepared her for. The sensory input was different from expectations. Earth's gravity, slightly lighter than Thessarin standard, made her feel simultaneously lighter and less grounded. The atmospheric composition affected how sense registered, made everything smell more intense and immediate. The light spectrum from Earth's sun made colors appear subtly different than she'd anticipated based on photographic documentation. Human cities were louder than Thessarin urban centers, more chaotic, more densely populated with less regard for personal space boundaries. She walked through Seattle, Marcus's city, following the recommendations from his messages without revealing her presence. The coffee shop he'd mentioned, 3rd and Pike, place called Monorail Espresso. The coffee tastes like someone's grandmother made it with love and spite in equal measure, and the barista has been there for 23 years. The park where he went to think? Volunteer Park, North End. The trees there have seen 100 years of humans living their small, complicated lives, and they're still growing anyway. Something about that perspective helps. The bookstore he described. Elliott Bay Books. It smells like possibilities and old paper and dreams people had while reading. I go there when I need to remember that humans have been trying to understand existence for thousands of years, and we're all equally confused. Every location revealed something Marcus's stories had hinted at, but she couldn't fully grasp from description alone. The coffee did taste bitter in ways she hadn't expected, but the atmosphere of the small shop, the baristas' practiced efficiency, the regulars who clearly came daily, the comfortable worn furniture, made the bitterness feel intentional. Even comforting. The park's trees did somehow feel ancient and patient in ways Thessaran vegetation didn't. They'd witnessed countless human experiences and remained fundamentally unchanged. There was perspective in that permanence. The bookstore overwhelmed her with the sheer physical volume of human thought preserved in paper form. Thousands of books, millions of words, humans documenting their attempts to understand themselves and their universe, generation after generation. Lissa started documenting her experiences. Not in formal research notes, but in personal observations. Humans design their cities as if trying to impose order on chaos, but they secretly celebrate when chaos wins. Random street art appears on authorized walls. Musicians perform without permits. Food vendors operate from trucks instead of permanent locations. The official structure exists, but humans delight in the improvisation that happens within and around it. Human food is engineered to trigger specific emotional memories, not just satisfy nutritional requirements. The coffee shop's espresso tastes the way it does because consistency creates comfort. The food vendor Marcus recommended serves the same recipes his grandmother used because replicating memory is more important than optimal nutrition. Humans have created thousands of words for different types of sadness and loneliness and happiness and love, but they still struggle to accurately communicate these feelings to each other. The precision of vocabulary doesn't guarantee clarity of understanding. Sometimes it makes communication harder because everyone's personal definition differs slightly from the official meaning. Marcus discovered Lissa was on Earth entirely by accident. He was browsing Elliott Bay Books, his weekly routine for clearing his head, when he saw her standing in the philosophy section reading Camus with an expression of intense concentration. "Lissa, what are you? How long have you been on Earth?" She looked up, startled but not entirely surprised. "4 days. I'm sorry I didn't tell you I was coming. I wanted to experience Earth first without your presence influencing my initial perceptions and observations. But I think I'm ready now to see it through your eyes as well as forming my own understanding." Marcus was simultaneously shocked, delighted, and concerned. "Does your government know you're here? Your institution?" I took personal leave. 6 weeks of accumulated vacation time. This isn't official research requiring institutional approval or governmental oversight. This is just me being curious about a world you kept describing in ways that made me need to experience it myself rather than continuing to study it from academic distance. Over the following weeks, Marcus became Lissa's guide to experiencing Earth rather than merely observing it. He took her to a live music venue where humans gathered to hear sounds organized in ways that made them feel connected to complete strangers. To a farmer's market where humans purchased food directly from people who'd grown it, creating temporary community through commercial exchange. To the ocean at dawn because humans have always been drawn to large bodies of water for reasons we don't entirely understand ourselves. Something about the rhythm and vastness helps us process existence. Lissa experienced Earth in ways that transformed her academic understanding into visceral comprehension. She tasted food made by someone's grandmother that did somehow contain both love and spite. The love in careful preparation, the spite in refusing to modernize recipes that had worked for generations. She stood in the rain and understood why humans found the sound comforting. It was rhythmic chaos that drowned out the internal noise in your own mind, replaced anxious thoughts with simple pattern of water striking surfaces. She sat in coffee shops watching humans interact and realized that loneliness in crowds was a universal feeling she'd experienced in Thessaran cities, but had never had adequate words for. Seeing humans experience the same isolation while surrounded by their own species made her own experiences feel less alien, more fundamentally shared across sentient life. Her documentation shifted from detached academic observation to something profoundly personal. I understand now why Marcus described autumn as beauty intertwined with death. I watched leaves fall today in Volunteer Park and felt the same melancholy humans must experience. Appreciation for beauty made more intense by its temporary nature. Thessalonian philosophy discusses impermanence abstractly, as intellectual concept to be contemplated. Humans experience it directly through seasonal change and build their entire cultural framework around accepting and even celebrating things that don't last. I attended a human musical performance tonight. Marcus took me to a small venue where an unknown musician performed original compositions. Thessalonians value technical precision and flawless execution in artistic expression. Humans seem to value emotional authenticity even when technical execution is imperfect. The musician made several noticeable errors, but the audience didn't care. They were connecting to the raw emotion being expressed. I cried during one particular song, which surprised me deeply. The music wasn't sad in any Thessalonian emotional framework I understand, but it was profoundly human, and that touched something I didn't know I was capable of feeling. Lissa's unauthorized journey became publicly known when she eventually published her observations, not as formal academic research paper, but as personal memoir titled Earth Through Curious Eyes, a Thessalonian's unauthorized adventure. The Thessalonian academic community was scandalized. She'd traveled without official institutional sanction, conducted no formal research protocols, violated approximately 15 different guidelines about proper field study methodology and cultural observation ethics. But the memoir became enormously popular among Thessalonians curious about humanity. Because Lissa described Earth not as external observer cataloging data points, but as person genuinely experiencing another species' world and allowing herself to be changed by that experience. She wrote about crying during human music, about finding comfort in bitter coffee served by the same barista for 23 years, about standing in rain feeling her anxious thoughts dissolve into simple rhythm, about the peculiar human practice of reading books in public spaces, simultaneously seeking solitude and community. Her government was less scandalized than they publicly pretended. The memoir created massive surge of interest in human Thessalonian cultural exchange. Applications for Earth visits increased by 300%. Tourism between species expanded significantly, and Lissa accidentally became the most effective unofficial cultural ambassador either species had ever produced. The human reaction was equally enthusiastic. Marcus wrote the foreword to the human language translation. I told Lissa stories about Earth the way humans tell stories, subjectively, emotionally, honestly rather than academically detached. She decided to experience those stories herself. What she's written is how Earth feels to someone encountering it with genuine curiosity and openness to being changed by the experience. Reading her observations about our world helps humans see ourselves the way outsiders perceive us, which is both uncomfortable and extraordinarily valuable. Years later, Earth Through Curious Eyes became required reading in xenocultural studies programs across multiple species. Not because it was academically rigorous, it explicitly wasn't, but because it demonstrated what genuine curiosity about another species' lived experience could reveal that formal research methodology often missed completely. When asked why she'd violated every professional protocol to make an unauthorized personal journey to Earth, Lissa gave the same answer. Marcus told me stories that made Earth sound not just academically interesting, but emotionally and existentially meaningful. I realized I could spend my entire career studying humanity from safe academic distance and never truly understand what it actually feels like to experience the world the way humans do. So I decided to stop studying and start experiencing. I walked through rain, tasted food made with love and spite, sat in coffee shops watching humans be lonely together, stood in forests watching leaves fall while contemplating the beauty of impermanence. Those experiences taught me more about humanity than any formal research methodology could have achieved, because they taught me to feel the world the way humans feel it rather than just analyze it from outside. And Marcus's perspective, when people asked about his role. I told Lissa stories about Earth because that's how humans process experience. We turn lived reality into narrative. She decided to come experience those narratives herself, without telling me in advance, without official sanction. Just because she was curious enough to take personal leave and buy a civilian transport ticket and show up in the bookstore I'd described. That curiosity, that willingness to actually experience rather than just academically study, is what created real cross-species understanding. She didn't just learn about Earth. She let Earth change her, let human experiences affect her emotionally, let herself cry at our music and find comfort in our rain and understand our loneliness. That's what genuine cultural exchange requires, but formal research often prevents. Curious about Earth, the alien woman set out on a journey that would amaze everyone, became the story of how authentic curiosity transcends official protocols, how experiencing a world as vulnerable person rather than detached researcher reveals truths that academic methodology deliberately excludes, and how sometimes the most profound cross-species understanding happens when someone is brave enough to just show up and actually live in another species' world for a while, fully accepting the risk of being fundamentally changed by the experience. Lissa had been curious about Earth, so she'd gone, experienced it, let it change her. And in documenting that change honestly, she'd accomplished more for human Thessaran understanding than decades of formal diplomatic and academic work.